All right, let me show you some of the steps involved for homework 12 here, where we're going to be using that old georeference map to try and trace an outline of what the Tennessee River used to look like before it was dammed up. And so if we come over here to the catalog pane, you can see I've created a folder called Homework 12, and everything I do is going to go in this folder. And the one thing that's in there right now is this georeference Kentucky map. And all these other things are in there because I started a project and I saved the project in this folder as well. But this is that georeference map, so I'm just going to drag it over here and it gets added. And you see it's georeferenced because the map shows up where it should. And that's what we did in our last homework assignment. And so what we need to do, now that we've added that map, is we need to zoom in. And here we can see the old Tennessee River. And here we can see the old Cumberland River. And the Cumberland was dammed to form Lake Barkley, and the Tennessee was dammed to form Kentucky Lake. And this area is now the land between the lakes. Okay, so what we need to do is make a polyline file that traces the banks of the Tennessee River. Eventually, we want this to be a polygon file, but it's easier to start with a polyline file. And so what we need to do is come over here to our folder, and we're going to right-click, choose New, Shapefile, and it's going to store it in that folder we created. We're going to name it Old Tennessee River, and it's going to be a polyline file. And for the coordinate system, we want to use the NAD 83 UTM Zone 16 North. That's a lot. But that's a common one that we're going to use. So when we choose our coordinate system, we see nothing's chosen right now. We can go to Projected Coordinate Systems, scroll down until we find UTMs, open it, scroll down until we find NAD 83, open it, and then scroll down until we see 16 North, which is where Western Kentucky is found. Now we could also right-click on that and add it to favorites, which I've already done. And so if you come up to my favorites, you see it's there too. And since we're going to be using this one a lot, I suggest you add it to your favorites. When I hit OK, now that's defined for the new shapefile we're going to create. So I hit Run. And now it's created. And if you look over here in the table of contents, here is the new shapefile. But nothing shows up because we have to build this shapefile. We haven't created it yet. So let's go ahead and create the new polyline shapefile, which is an outline of the Tennessee River. So I'm going to zoom in on the mouth of the river. Let's go to Edit, Create, and then I'm going to select the Old Tennessee River. and I want this line tool. And so I'll start here at the mouth, and I'll just click along one bank to trace it. And as I move along, I will get to the edge, and I need to keep going. So an easy way to move the map is to hold down the letter C on your keyboard, and you'll notice that my icon changed to the pan tool. So now I can click and drag and pan that map, and then when I let go of C, I'm back to my editing tool, and I can just keep going. And then as I get to the edge again, I can hold down C and move the map. Now as you're going, occasionally you might misclick and you might make a mistake. And so I'm clicking and oh no, that is in the wrong spot. Don't worry about it. Just go back up, right click on that, choose delete vertex. And now you're back where you went. And you can walk back as many of those as you need. And so we'll go ahead and continue this. Until we've reached all the way to the, roughly the Tennessee-Kentucky border. Okay, you see I'm to the edge of the map, and so what I want to do is just continue over to the east bank, and then I'm going to come up the east bank. So you want one continuous polyline that outlines the entire river. Okay, now that I'm all the way back to my starting point, we have a critical process here. We need this polyline to be closed. Later, we want to turn it into a polygon. We need the polyline to be all the way closed. So we need to close this polyline. So I'm going to first zoom in a little bit. Second, I'm going to turn off the old georeference map. And now you might see that our line that we just traced is kind of off from the underlying base map. Well, that's because georeferencing old maps is not, there's some inaccuracy to that. The old map might be inaccurate. Of course, we're taking a map that was scanned in and we're trying to fit it to the proper coordinates, so it's not going to be perfect, but it's also not too bad. Anyway, we need to finish this off so this polyline is closed. Now, it used to be easy in the old art map, but this newer version doesn't do it quite the same way, but I found a way to make this work. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click somewhere near the starting point, make that last vertex, and then I'm going to right click and choose finish. And now I need to join these two ends together. So what I want to do is come up here to the Edit tab, go to the Tools, and you see Edit Vertices, and that's a very common tool. And when I do that, you see all the vertices show up, and I'm going to grab this last one, and I'm just going to drag it over here until it snaps to the first one, and I'm going to let go. And I'm going to go ahead and click somewhere off of that. And you see that it repaired it and it joined them together. And so now I have a closed polyline. This edit vertices is also nice if you want to kind of fix your polyline file. So I'm going to turn the map back on. And, you know, this spot here could maybe be a little bit better. So I'm going to click on the polyline. You see the Edit Vertices tool is selected. And so I can grab these and kind of move them to make them fit the map a little better. I can also right-click and choose to add a vertex. If I don't like a vertex, I can right-click on it and delete it. And so these are things you can use to really make your shapefile the shape you want. Now I'm going to click off. It's repairing that. And so the most important thing now is to come up here to Edit and choose Save, because we don't want to lose our work. Save all my edits? Yes, I do. And there you have it. And so now I'm going to first, let's change the color. So it shows up better. So let's make it red and maybe 2 or 3 points. Let's apply that. So now you can see my polyline. And I'm going to zoom to it. And there you have it. I have created a polyline outline of the old Tennessee River, which is georeferenced because this map is georeferenced. Our next step is going to be to convert this to a polygon. Okay, now we want to convert this polyline outline to a polygon shapefile. And so there are a couple ways to do this. Here's one. What we're going to do is come up here to Analysis and choose Tools. And that will get the geoprocessing pane to show up. And we want to look for the Feature to Polygon tool. And you see we've got Feature to Polygon Data Management. That's the tool we want. So let's launch it. To input, we want to put in the polyline file we just created. Our output feature class, we are going to name it Old Tennessee River Polygon. And if you look, you see it's going to save it in the geodatabase, which was created when we created our map project. And that's fine. There's really nothing else to change here, so let's run. And you may notice that a new polygon file is here. And so if we turn off the polyline file, you can see there's a new polygon file. And again, don't forget that it's saved in the geodatabase, which you can see if you look closely at the file name here. And so awesome, that's what we wanted. But we need to do a little editing on this polygon shapefile. So let me do something. Let me turn off the shapefile and let's zoom in on the old map. And if you look, in the old Tennessee River, there were a few islands. And we don't want these islands to be part of the polygon shapefile. They're not part of the river. So we need to do a donut hole cut. We need to cut these out of the existing polygon. If I turn on the polygon, you see that those islands are not represented. So we need to modify this, but we also need to be able to see what we're working on. So let's change the symbology. So I'm going to come over here to symbology, and I want to change the appearance. And if I go to the gallery, I can do black outline, or I can search for hollow. And there's extent hollow, it's the same thing. And when I choose that, now you can see it's black. If I turn off that old map, you can see now we just have the polygon outline to work with. Or it's just colored that way. So what we want to do is modify this polygon. So let's go to Edit, Modify, and the Modify Features tab comes up, or the pane comes up. And let's scroll down to this divide area, and we want the Split tool. And so the Split tool is asking us to select one or more lines or polygons. So let's come over here, and if we click inside these lines, there we select our polygon. So let's zoom in on an island. And now we've got the Split tool. We can just start clicking. And my computer's a little slow, so that's why it took a while for those points to show up. And I'm just going to outline this island. Now, again, we need to finish this and make it closed. And again, the new ArcMap makes it harder than it needs to be. But here's how we're going to do it. When you get all the way around, make your last vertex pretty close to your first vertex, and then right-click and choose Square and Finish. And when you do that, it will close off that polygon. And so now we have that island outlined. But here's the deal. The island is still there. We haven't made a donut hole. If we go back to symbology, you don't have to do this. I'm just going to show you this for an example. And if I change the color of this polygon shapefile, you see that island is still there. It's still part of the polygon. What we've done is we've just made it a separate part. And so it's its own part. And so what we want to do is just delete this part that represents the island. So I want to come up to Edit, get the Select tool, and I'm going to click off so nothing is selected. And now I'm going to select that island. And so just the island is selected, and now I'm going to hit Delete on my keyboard. And when I do that, I cut a donut hole. And so in that way, I'm going to create donut holes for all the other islands. So if I come back to symbology, go back to my outline, and if I scroll here, here's another island, and there's a few more. And so I'm going to use the same process to donut hole where these islands are. So one of the reasons that we wanted to make this a polygon shapefile is so we can do things like calculate the area. And one way we can do that is to add it to the attribute table. So here I've got my old Tennessee River polygon. And I'm going to open up the attribute table. And you can see there's a few files that have already been created. And we already have the area that's been created. But I want to know the area in hectares. So I'm going to add a new field. And you'll notice that that opens up another tab. And this is the Edit Fields tab. And here's all the existing fields. And here's a spot for me to make a new field. So I'm going to make a new field called area in hectares. And you can give it an alias, and I'll just give it the same alias. And I want this to be a double data type. And that's good for storing large numbers that have a decimal point. And so that's really all I need to do. That's all I care to do anyway. So I'm going to close this tab. It's going to ask, do I want to save my changes? And yes. And so now when we go back to the attribute table, you can see there's a new field, but there's nothing in it. So we want to have ArcGIS calculate the area of this polygon in hectares and put that value in here. So I'm going to right click and choose Calculate Geometry. And that opens up the Calculate Geometry Attributes tool over here in this geoprocessing pane. And so the input features is the polygon that we're working on. The target field, I want to store the data. I want to store the value in this area in hectares that we just created. And so the property I want to store there is the area. Pretty straightforward. Now we need to know what units. The whole point of this is to calculate the area in hectares. So when I do this drop down, here's hectares. Finally, it wants to know what coordinate system to use to do the calculations. And if I do this drop down, I see I can choose from either the map coordinate system or the whatever coordinate system the polygon is using, or whatever coordinate system this georeferenced file is using, or I can go over to the globe and pick one. The easiest thing would be to just select and use the same coordinate system that the polygon itself is using. Now you might not remember what that is. You see that it popped up here. As always, we want to always be sure that we know what coordinate system we're using. It's very critical. So if you forget, you can come over here to the table of contents, right click, choose properties, and then in the layer properties you want to find the source for this layer. And if you scroll down here, you see the spatial reference. And when I drop that down, here you can see that we're using the NAD83 UTM Zone 16 North projected coordinate system. So that's how you can tell what coordinate system you're using for any shapefile. Get in the habit of doing that. I'm going to ask you that a bunch. It's just a good thing to know. At this point, I have everything I need, so I'm just going to hit run. And when it's finished, if we come over here to the table, we can see that now there is a value. If I expand this, there is the area in hectares. Now you might notice that this value is the same as this value, only with the decimal point shifted. Well, think about that. Remember that this shapefile is in the UTM projection. UTMs does all its work in meters. That's one of the reasons we pick that projection, is because it does its work in meters. And so when it automatically created the shape area, it created that area in square meters. And so you've got, my eyes are too bad, I can't tell where the comma should be. It looks like maybe you've got about 92 billion square meters or so. And we know that 1 hectare is 10,000 square meters. And so if you convert square meters to hectares, you get this many hectares. And I think my math is right, but again, my eyes aren't good enough. I can't tell exactly where the commas should be, but you get the point. You get the point in that these numbers are the same because one's in square meters and one is in hectares, and they're easily converted. And that's why the metric system is awesome, but that's for another day. All right. And so once you've done that, now we have everything we need for the Old Tennessee River.